Hey, this is Kevin with AGL, and today we're going to do the build video on the My TwinDream. We had the introduction video with Brandon where he went over all the components. They did a dry fit to check all the parts and everything, and today we're actually going to start piecing this guy together. You can see that we did put a little bit of color on our aircraft. We went with a red tail and a little bit of striping on our fuselage, and you'll be able to see that a lot better as we start to put this guy together. We'll also go over some of the electronic components and things like that really briefly that we plan to use in our particular aircraft, and to help you kind of choose what you want to do. I know the first question to be asked is what kind of paint we use on this aircraft. We use this Krylon Dual Super Bond. I've used some other Krylon brands. Just the old rattle can. Just make sure to keep plenty of distance between you and the aircraft. 6 to 12 inches so that you don't get the accelerant on the aircraft because it will melt the foam. Alright, so let's begin. Okay, so the first thing we're going to do is start by assembling our fuselage. We've taken our two halves, we have them up here, and our bits and pieces that are going to go inside the fuselage. We have the battery tray to go up front. This little guy is, we are going to embed it in the tail back here just like this, and we're eventually going to bolt on our elevator with this, so we need to make sure to put that in before we glue the two halves together. And we have our servo trays for the tail. Okay, so the glue we're going to be using is this welder's contact cement. We've used this on several other plane builds and on some other EPO planes, and it seems to work just great. So we're going to start out by running a bead all along this area. This stuff is great because you don't have to worry about it drying immediately. Okay, so before we join the two halves together, we are going to take this little piece here for the elevator and make sure that we get a nice fit in the back of the fuse back here. So you can see how we took this piece and we just stuck it in there. We're eventually going to put the elevator on top, and you're going to have a screw that's going to come through the top of the elevator and screw into there. So you need to make sure to get this guy put in here before you join these two halves together. Alright, so we have our two halves together. We're going to put a couple pieces of tape on this seam just to make sure that it holds really well while it's sitting off to the side and drying. And then we'll move on to the wings. Notice we're taking care not to put any tape on our painted surface, because even though this is painter's tape, it still stands a good chance of pulling this paint off of the foam. Okay, before we move on to the wings, we're going to go ahead and stick our battery tray inside the aircraft real quick. It just sits right up here. You can see the little indentation in the foam for it. And we're just going to take a little bit of welders and put on some of these high spots and then slide the tray in. Okay, so we've got the glue in for our battery tray. We're going to just take and insert it through the front, just turning it just a little bit. Luckily, there's enough room inside this fuselage to put both of your hands without any problem. And then we're just going to place it in here. You can feel when it's locked in to its indention in the foam down here. We're just going to press down just for a second so the welders will stick to the wood. You won't have any problem with this guy holding. The welders is a really good glue for wood, foam, just about anything. We've had a lot of success with it. So now we're going to put in our servo trays. We've got these little guys, so we can glue these into the fuselage and then screw our servos in and later change them out if needed. One thing to note, you see inside the front of the servo tray you've got this little indention, and you're going to line it up with this little indention here. Okay? And we've already done the dry fit with these. They fit really well. We're just going to put a little bit of welders on the sides after hitting with sandpaper for a second, just to rough it up because it's nice smooth plastic. I want to make sure that the welders adheres very well. Put just a little bit of glue along the bottom because as we push in, it's going to spread the glue up. And then just slide this guy all the way in there like so. I'm going to take and clean up this glue just a little bit. And there you go. We're going to do the same thing for the rudder servo tray. For the rudder servo tray, you can see is a little bit larger. You need to make sure to go to the very outer edge of that so that you have plenty of room for your rudder to sit in here. So we're going to rough up our edges just a little bit. And on this one, you only have to put glue on this one side, okay? Because the inside is going to touch the rudder. One neat thing about this aircraft is that the rudder and the elevator are removable. So if you tear one up in flight, you can possibly get some parts in the future from My TwinDream and change those guys out. You can, of course, skip some of these pieces and just glue everything in to make sure that you have a really good secure fit. But I think it's going to work just fine the way he has it designed, and that way you can exchange some of the parts. Alright, next we're going to go over some of the screws in our screw pack and install the clevises. You'll note right here we have 8 pulled away, and we're going to use these to install the tops of our servo trays that will go into the wing. Next we have these 3 long thin screws here and one that is slightly shorter. These are just a few extra inside the pack. These 3 long and the slightly shorter one are what we're going to use to install our clevises. The short ones here with the larger Phillips head on the top, those are going to be used in the top of the wing as set screws on our carbon fiber, or correction, they're not carbon fiber, the fiberglass rods going through the wings. So we'll get to that in just a minute. We're going to start out by installing these clevises. Okay, we're going to start out by installing the control horns or clevises on our wings, elevator, and rudder. We're going to start out by using the shorter of the 4 screws we showed you just a second ago, and install our clevis on our rudder, or correction, on the elevator. You'll notice this is the top of the elevator here. We have an indention where we're going to eventually put a small plastic piece and a screw through, and a small block of foam here to line up with the bottom of the fuselage. So for our elevator, we're going to take the clevis, where it's going to be mounted on the bottom side facing towards the front of the aircraft, which is going to be this direction here. These are neat little clevises. They have little bitty plastic tabs, and you'll notice you have indentions in your foam, so these will fit in here. It's a really nice fit, and they line up really well. We're going to take that and hold it with 2 fingers, flip it over, get our bottom piece, which also has 2 little tabs, hold it in there, and then take our shorter of the thin screws and put it in through the top. Doesn't have to be super tight, just good and snug. Okay? We'll set that out of the way. Next, we're going to do our rudder. And on the rudder, our servo tray is going to sit on this side, so we need to make sure to have the clevis right over here facing the front of the aircraft. We're going to take one of our longer thin screws, and now we completed the rudder and elevator. We're going to go ahead and install these on our wing. You can see on the bottom we've got the hole for our servo to put our servo tray in. So we need to make sure to have the clevis on the bottom facing towards that servo. The next thing we're going to do is install these little servo trays in our wings. You'll notice there are little symbols inside the trays and they differ. So we assumed that meant right and left, and Brandon was able to look that up and determine that these did mean right and left. So we're going to take, we've done dry fits of our trays. They fit really nice. We're going to pull those out, rough them up just a little bit with our piece of sandpaper, and install them in the wing with a little bit of welder's glue. And one thing to note before installing these is that you have a larger hole on one side of the tray and a thinner hole on the other side. The thinner hole is the one that goes towards your pre-cut indention in the foam for your servo line. We're just going to push these guys in here, make sure that they're good and flush, and do the same thing with the other wing. Alright, so we've got those installed. While they're gluing, we're going to take the top half of our servo tray cover and we're going to install the servo. Once it's completed, then all we have to do is set it back on here, put our 4 screws in, and plug in. We've mounted our servo to the top of our servo tray, and we're going to take and fold our wire over just a little bit and start it in the hole there. And then we can squeeze our servo in and put our 4 screws in. For the purpose of this, we're only going to put 1 in just so we can demonstrate that everything is lined up and working the way it needs. Then we have our Clevis rod, our push rod for the aileron. We can hook it up and adjust it as needed, and run our wire for the servo in the supplied channel. Now we are going to come up just a little bit short, so we're going to need an extension. One neat thing about this aircraft is a little channel here they have where this servo is going to come out, and you can plug straight into the extension and eventually plug into the shoulder that will be installed on the aircraft. Alright, so we installed the left-hand servo inside the wing as well, and ran it through the channel. We did note that once we stretched that servo wire out and put it all the way in the channel, we were able to get the end of the servo to come out in the little hole down there. So you can, once we run the wires through the shoulder, you may be able to stick your extension directly onto there without having to add any extra. But we'll find that out shortly as we put the shoulders on the airplane, which is what we're going to do now. Okay, now we're going to assemble and install our hatch lock. One neat thing about this aircraft is a really large hatch, so we can get inside the entire fuselage and be able to adjust batteries or move things around in there and be able to work really, really easily inside the aircraft. We're going to start out by taking our post and sliding the spring on the back. You'll notice at the top here we have a little indentation to allow this to slide back and forth. Take our other half and just snap it on there, and it has a fairly good press fit, so there's really no need to put any CA or any other glue on here. And there we go, we have a little hatch lock. Now this is going to fit in here just like this, and we are going to put a little bit of welders in with this guy. We're going to start just like with the other pieces, rough it up a little bit. Now we have a nice secure latch for our hatch. Okay, for one of the last steps we're going to do is assemble the tail feathers here. As you remember, we installed this plastic piece inside the rear of the aircraft so that we can bolt on our elevator. And we talked about with the elevator, we have the screw hole here and a locking lug piece of foam there. So we're simply going to take the elevator and fit it on right there. We have this small plastic piece here, which is going to slide right in there. And then we are going to take the shorter of these 3 screws here and use it to install the elevator. Now for the rudder, we've got this rectangle square piece. It's going to slide right over there. And we have a square piece for the back. And slide over just like that. And then we simply fit on the rudder. Nice snug fit. And we'll roll it over and put the screws in. And this plate here, we have little tabs and identical tabs in the foam. And same thing for the rear. We have 2 screws left, a long one and a slightly shorter one. They're going to go in there. Okay, one other thing to note while we're working on the tail of the aircraft is when you mount your servos, and the elevator is going to go here. We have the elevator clevis on here. You're going to use the control rod for the elevator that has the carbon fiber sleeve. We're going to mount it down here just like this. This isn't the best setup because it's pushing to give us up elevator, so you can have flex influenced on the rod. That's why they put this sleeve on here. It has a bit of a band-aid to help correct that. And of course the one without the sleeve is going to go on top up here for the rudder. Okay, the wings attach very simply on here. We have our spars, our fiberglass spars going through the wing, the shoulders here. They were still installed from where we had glued on the shoulders. So now for the wing, all we did is we slid the wing on. You can see right here we have a tab with a nut built in to the plastic there, and we've installed or plugged in the servo. There's plenty of room back here for it to back into. These other 2 screw holes are going to be set screws that are actually going to screw into the fiberglass rods. So we just slide the wing in. We're going to put in our mechanical screw first. And then we will put in our 2 set screws. And what we end up with is a very solid bird. This wing has almost no flex in it now. Alright, so for our forward hatch, we didn't have anything supplied with us. We have these little indentions here and here, and I assume magnets would be good to go in there. There weren't any supplied in the kit, so we'll source some out, and then we'll be able to have a good positive lock with it. We have a tab that fits in the front, and then with our magnets that should fit in there very nicely. For the upper hatch, one issue that we've found is that it's a little bulbous here in the middle. It's a really nice hatch. We spoke earlier in the other video about the bar going through it. It keeps it really stiff. Our little hatch lock, if you put it down, has a nice positive lock. We're just a little bulbous right here. It doesn't fit really smooth. But other than that, it's a really nice aircraft. It's a really rigid, strong design. It's supposed to be a good mix, in our opinion, of the Sky Hunter, which is a favorite of us, and the Twin Star. You have all this room inside the fuselage, just like a Sky Hunter. We fit tons of batteries, flight controllers, everything we want in there, and still have the nice shape and tractor style of the Twin Star, which is going to make it really efficient. It's going to be just whisper quiet going through the air. and it should just sip on the amps as you're cruising along. And that's about it. Well, this concludes our build video of the My TwinDream from My Fly Dream. And this has been a very simple build. We don't have instructions, but you don't really need them for this aircraft. Just a little bit of knowledge is going to help you piece this thing together really quickly. We look forward to the maiden. We're going to have some nice electronics in it. We're going to have the Easy UHF, the Vector, and a couple FlightMax batteries, and this thing should cruise along very nicely for a long period of time. I look forward to doing some long-range stuff with this guy. And I'm Kevin with AGL, and we really appreciate you checking our video out, and look forward to the maiden flight really soon. Thank you for watching. Make sure to like, share, and subscribe to our channel. Thanks. Okay, so